I didn't want to go to the reunion in the first place. 10 years after high school, what's the point? Most of the people I knew back then had either vanished into mediocre lives or were waiting for this night to flex like they'd become something extraordinary. Still, Claire wanted to go. She insisted it would be fun, a night of nostalgia, a chance to laugh about the past. So I agreed. That was my first mistake. The old gym hadn't changed much. Same squeaky floorboards, same smell of sweat mixed with disinfectant, though now someone had tried to mask it with rented lights and a cheap DJ. Banners hung from the ceiling, reminding us that once upon a time we were the class of 2013, full of promise and fake confidence. I watched my classmates hug each other, some drunk already, others parading their kids on phone screens or bragging about careers. I kept to the bar at the side of the gym, sipping watered-down rum and coke, nodding politely whenever someone remembered my name. Claire was in her element. She looked stunning in a red dress, the kind that hugged her figure in all the ways I didn't deserve. People swarmed her, old friends and half-forgotten rivals. She glowed under the attention. She had that easy smile, that laugh that carried, and I was just the man on her arm. I didn't mind at first. Let her have her fun. But then she started disappearing. First to the bathroom, then to say hi to someone on the other side of the gym, then out into the hallway to catch up in private. Each time I told myself not to overthink it. It was a reunion, not a prison. But there was a rhythm to her vanishing acts, a kind of pattern that started gnawing at me. I lost sight of her for the third time when I was talking to an old classmate, Tyler. He was drunk, slurring, bragging about a car dealership he ran. Then he leaned in, lowered his voice, and said, "Funny, huh? Seeing Claire back with Ryan tonight. Feels like high school all over again." The words hit like a slap. "Back with Ryan?" I asked. Tyler blinked at me. "You didn't know? They dated back in junior year. I saw them heading down the east hallway a few minutes ago." Guess history repeats itself. I forced a laugh, but inside my chest tightened. Ryan Cole. Of course. The guy every teacher adored for his fake charm. The guy who slept his way through prom dates and bragged about it. The guy Claire had never once mentioned to me. My stomach twisted. I excused myself, walked fast through the gym, pushing past conversations and hugs. The east hallway was darker, quieter. Old trophy cases lined the walls. Dust settled on forgotten plaques. My shoes echoed as I moved. I tried doors one by one, locked classrooms, empty offices. My pulse thudded in my ears. Then I reached the storage room, the one where the janitors used to keep spare desks and boxes of textbooks. The handle was warm. I heard muffled sounds from inside. A low laugh. A whisper. A soft thud. I didn't knock. I turned the handle and shoved the door open. The smell hit me first. Sweat, alcohol, dust. Then my eyes adjusted to the dim light of a single bulb overhead. And there they were. Claire bent forward over the old wooden desk, her hair falling into her face, dress bunched around her waist. Ryan behind her, shirt half off, his grin wide and arrogant. They froze when the door slammed against the wall. For a second, nobody moved. The sound of my heartbeat drowned out everything. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring, as if my brain needed extra time to process what my eyes had already seen. Claire whipped around, face pale, mouth opening and closing without words. Ryan didn't flinch. He leaned back against the desk, pulling up his pants casually, like I was just an inconvenient interruption. He smirked at me, that same smirk he'd worn in high school whenever he got away with something. "Jason," Claire finally managed, her voice trembling. "It's not." "Don't," I snapped. The word came out like a growl. "Don't you dare." The rage boiled up before I could stop it. I lunged at Ryan, grabbing his shirt, slamming him against the wall of stacked chairs. The metal rattled and clanged. He laughed. Actually laughed, even as I shoved him harder. "Relax, man," he said. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." That laugh broke something in me. I pulled back and punched him. My fist connected with his jaw, the impact sending pain shooting up my arm. He stumbled, cursed, but still wore that smug grin. Claire screamed my name, trying to pull me off him, but I shoved her hand away. "You piece of garbage," I shouted. "You think this is a joke?" He spat blood onto the floor, shrugged. "What can I say? She came to me, just like old times." That line cut deeper than the punch. My stomach flipped. Old times. She had chosen him before. And now again. I wanted to hit him again, but footsteps pounded outside the door. The commotion had drawn people. Suddenly, classmates crowded the doorway, faces wide-eyed, phones already out. The scene burned into memory. Me with my fist raised, Ryan with his lip bleeding, Claire half-dressed, screaming for everyone to stop looking. Someone shouted, "Holy crap, they're in the storage room." Laughter and gasps filled the hallway. I heard the click of cameras, the whispers turning into shouts. Claire tried to cover herself, tried to plead. It's not what it looks like. Jason, please listen. But the crowd didn't care. The reunion had just delivered its biggest scandal. Ryan wiped his mouth, pointed at me, and said loudly, he should thank me. I'm doing him a favor. She never stopped wanting me. The hallway erupted. Gasps, nervous laughter, some people cheering the drama like it was entertainment. Phones kept recording. I looked at Claire, her face streaked with tears, mascara running, trying to explain to me while everyone watched. I didn't listen. I turned and walked straight through the crowd, their voices chasing me down the hall. People tried to stop me, tried to ask questions, but I pushed through, out into the cold night air. My chest heaved. My hands shook with leftover adrenaline. Behind me, I could still hear Claire screaming my name, begging, swearing, sobbing. And over it all, Ryan's laughter echoing through the hallway. That sound stuck with me more than anything else. I thought walking out of that storage room would be the hardest part. I figured the image of Claire bent over that desk, Ryan grinning like he'd won some prize, and the eruption of gasps from our classmates would be the memory that haunted me. But leaving wasn't the end of it. It was only the start. By the time I reached my car, my phone was vibrating nonstop in my pocket. I pulled it out, and the screen lit up with so many notifications it looked like a slot machine. Dozens of messages, new group chats I hadn't even been in before, random numbers texting me. I opened one without thinking and nearly dropped the phone. Someone had already uploaded a video. There I was, shoving Ryan against the stack of chairs, Claire screaming, her dress pulled halfway up, Ryan smirking through the chaos. People were laughing in the background, a chorus of, "Oh my God," and "Holy shit," echoing over it. Someone had even given it a title, Storage Room Scandal, Class of 2013 Reunion. The moment wasn't just my private humiliation anymore. It was entertainment for the whole town. By the time I got back to my apartment, my phone battery was nearly dead from the flood. Old friends I hadn't spoken to in years were messaging me. Some offered sympathy. Others sent the video with a string of laughing emojis. A couple just said, "Man, I'm sorry, but that's wild." I threw the phone onto the couch, but it kept buzzing. Claire called 23 times before I blocked her. She filled my voicemail with a soundtrack of sobbing, begging, and half excuses. I played one out of morbid curiosity, her voice cracking as she said it didn't mean anything, that she'd had too much to drink, that Ryan forced himself on her, that it was just nostalgia. She switched stories mid-sentence, stacking lies on top of each other. I deleted the rest without listening. The next morning, my mother called. Her voice was brittle, the way it had been when my father died years ago. She asked me if it was true, if the woman she thought was going to be her daughter-in-law had really done what people were saying. She had seen the video. Everyone had. I told her yes, it was true, and for a long stretch neither of us spoke, just the faint sound of her breathing heavy on the other end. I realized the scandal wasn't mine alone. It had seeped into the people around me, staining everything. At work that Monday, my boss called me into his office. He was an alumnus of the same high school, so of course he had already heard. He closed the door, rubbed his temples, and told me clients had been asking questions. He said he wasn't firing me, but the whole mess was becoming visible in ways that could damage the firm. That was the word he used. Visible. My humiliation had turned into some public brand everyone else had to manage. Meanwhile, Claire was busy trying to save face. Since I wouldn't take her calls, she turned to Facebook. She wrote a long, rambling post about how I had lashed out in jealousy, how Ryan was just a friend, how the video was misleading. She painted herself as the victim of a misunderstanding. It didn't work. People weren't buying it. Screenshots of her with Ryan in that room spread everywhere, and every time she tried to defend herself, someone dropped another screenshot or clip. The internet had decided she was a liar, and once it decides, you're done. 2 days after the reunion, I heard a loud knock on my door. I opened it to find Claire standing there, her makeup smeared, hair tangled, looking like she hadn't slept in days. She begged me to let her in. I told her there was nothing to say. She tried pushing past me, but I held the door. She said she loved me, that she had made a mistake, that Ryan pressured her. She changed her story 3 times in 30 seconds, as though if she just found the right version I'd forgive her. Behind her, I saw my neighbor watching from across the hall. Another door cracked open further down, people curious to see the drama live. They had seen the video, now they were seeing the aftermath. Claire dropped to her knees, clutching my leg, sobbing loudly enough for the whole floor to hear. I told her to leave, my voice sharp, and the words echoed down the hall. She finally stood, her face twisting from sorrow to fury. She hissed that I'd regret throwing her away, that everyone would believe I attacked Ryan, and stormed off in her heels, leaving me standing with the eyes of my neighbors burning into my back. The next morning, the police called. Ryan had filed a report. They wanted me to come in and answer questions about the reunion incident. I sat in a buzzing little room with a flickering fluorescent light, giving my statement. I told them I'd walked in on my fiancé with another man, that I shoved him in rage, that I hit him once, and then walked away. The officer nodded and said several witnesses had already stated Ryan provoked me, and there was footage that showed him laughing and taunting me. For the moment, it wasn't going anywhere. But the fact that I was even sitting in that chair, explaining myself like a criminal, made me sick. When I walked out, my phone buzzed again. Photos this time. Ryan at a bar, his jaw swollen, grinning with a drink in his hand, showing it off like a trophy. And sitting next to him, laughing, holding his hand, Claire. I stared at the screen until my knuckles went white. That night, I couldn't sit still. I couldn't hide inside my apartment while they sat there parading around like celebrities. So I drove to the bar. It was one of those dives with sticky floors and half-dead neon lights. The second I walked in, every head turned. People recognized me instantly. Whispers rippled, phones lifted. They all knew who I was. Claire saw me first. Her eyes went wide, her smile vanishing. Ryan smirked, raised his glass, and called across the bar, "If it isn't the star of the reunion." The place erupted with laughter. I walked toward their table, every step measured, my fists clenched at my sides. The room went quiet as I stopped in front of them. I asked Ryan if he really thought this was funny. He leaned back in his chair, draping his arm around Claire, pulling her against him. He told me it was history, that 10 years later she still knew who she wanted, that I should face it. I'd lost, and she had chosen him. The words dug under my skin, but before I could answer, a voice cut through the silence. It came from behind me, slurred but clear. Lisa, Claire's old best friend, stumbled forward from the bar, drunk and swaying. She looked straight at Claire, then at Ryan, and laughed bitterly. "That's not the whole story, Ryan," she said. The tension snapped like a wire. Ryan sneered at her, told her to shut up. But Lisa just smirked. She told him Claire hadn't only been crawling back to him. She had been with someone else too. Another man. The bar erupted in gasps. Phones came up again, capturing every word. Ryan's face twisted in confusion and anger. He stood, towering over Claire, demanding to know who. Claire stammered, her lips trembling, denying it weakly. But Lisa wasn't finished. She said she had seen Claire at a hotel last month, and it wasn't Ryan she was with. The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan turned on Claire, his fury boiling over, while she sat pale and speechless. The classmates who had been laughing a minute earlier now stared with wide eyes, caught between horror and fascination. And for the first time since the reunion, I didn't feel rage or shame. I felt a cold, steady satisfaction, watching the two of them start to tear each other apart under the weight of their own mess. When I walked out of that bar after Lisa's drunken revelation, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would finally start dying down. I had seen Ryan's face twist in shock, had watched Claire choke on her words while the crowd turned against her, and for the first time since the reunion, I felt like the weight wasn't all on me anymore. But scandals like this don't fade. They don't shrink. They feed themselves, grow bigger, spill into places you never expect. By the next morning, the story wasn't just about Claire and Ryan. The video of Lisa exposing her at the bar had made its way online. Someone had uploaded the entire thing. Me standing there, Ryan's smirk melting off his face, Lisa shouting that Claire had been with another man, and the eruption of the crowd. The clip spread faster than the storage room video. Strangers who didn't even know us were commenting, speculating, inventing theories about who the other guy might be. People turned it into a guessing game, tagging old classmates, dragging names into it. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Some classmates messaged me, apologizing that I had been dragged into something so insane. Others sent screenshots of the bar video, adding comments like, "Bro, you won this round," as if it was some kind of sport. A few strangers even followed me on social media, sending me messages that were a mix of sympathy and entertainment, people treating my ruined engagement like binge-worthy reality TV. Ryan, of course, didn't take it quietly. That night, someone sent me a clip of him live streaming from his car, raging about how Claire had lied to him too, calling her names, saying she was trash, accusing her of stringing both of us along. He looked drunk, shouting into his phone, demanding people pick sides. It would have been laughable if it wasn't my life at the center of the spectacle. Claire didn't disappear either. She tried to clap back online, making her own video, crying into the camera about how she had been betrayed by friends and humiliated by people she trusted. She didn't mention me. Not once. She painted herself as the victim of gossip, claiming Lisa was jealous, claiming Ryan was toxic, claiming the whole story was blown out of proportion. But every time she opened her mouth, someone dropped another clip, another screenshot, another piece of evidence that made her look like a liar. The internet had decided, and it wasn't in her favor. The whispers reached everywhere. At work, I overheard two coworkers in the break room arguing about whether Claire had cheated with 2 guys or 3. They shut up when they noticed me walk in, but their faces said enough. Even my boss couldn't ignore it anymore. He called me back into his office and told me, gently but firmly, that clients were uncomfortable being associated with someone embroiled in scandal. I wasn't fired, not directly, but I was told to take extended leave, which, in professional language, meant don't come back. Losing my job should have been the lowest point, but it wasn't. The lowest point came when I went out to grab food one night and saw my own face on a flyer taped to a street lamp. Someone had printed stills from the storage room video and made a meme out of it, plastering it around town. Under my photo, bold letters read, "Reunion champion, walked in on his girl." I stood there staring at it, numb, while people walking by chuckled. The humiliation should have destroyed me, and maybe it was. But something inside me shifted. I realized I wasn't the only one being dragged. Ryan was unraveling. Claire was unraveling. And the more they clawed at each other, the more the spotlight moved off me. The breaking point came a few nights later at another bar. This time, I hadn't planned to be there. A friend texted me, said I needed to come, said I wouldn't believe it. Against my better judgment, I went. When I walked in, I saw Ryan first. He was drunk, standing on a chair, shouting to anyone who would listen. His jaw was still swollen, and he kept pointing at it, telling the crowd how he'd taken a punch, like a man. People weren't impressed. They were laughing at him, mocking him. Claire sat at a table in the corner, makeup smeared, glaring at him with hatred. Ryan saw me and immediately started yelling. He called me names, told the bar I was pathetic, that I couldn't handle losing, that I was nothing compared to him. I didn't move. I just stood there, letting him dig his own grave. Then, out of nowhere, Claire stood up, marched over to him, and slapped him across the face. The sound cracked through the bar, silencing the laughter. "You ruined my life," she screamed at him, loud enough for the whole place to hear. "You promised me we'd be together, that it would all work out, and now look at this. Everyone hates me because of you." Ryan stumbled, shocked, then tried to grab her arm. She yanked away, shouting that he had used her, that he had convinced her to risk everything just for him to gloat. The crowd watched, phones out, recording every second. I should have left then. I should have walked out and let them implode. But I stayed. Maybe I wanted to see how far they would sink. Maybe I wanted proof that I wasn't the fool here. They were. Ryan shouted back, calling her a liar, telling everyone she had been cheating on him with someone else, that she was never faithful. Claire screamed that he was making it up, that he was just bitter because she didn't want him anymore. The argument spiraled until Claire grabbed a drink from a nearby table and threw it in his face. Ryan lunged at her, and people jumped in to pull them apart. In the chaos, someone shouted, "This is better than the reunion." Laughter roared through the bar, drowning out their fight. I slipped out before the police arrived. The next morning, the videos were everywhere. Clips of Claire slapping Ryan. Clips of him screaming at her. Memes with captions like, "Storage Room, Part 2, Barroom Brawl." The internet wasn't letting this die. And for once, I wasn't the one at the center. It was them. Their humiliation was feeding the machine now. Still, it wasn't over. Claire tried one last time to spin the story. She posted a long rant about how Ryan had manipulated her, how I had abandoned her, how Lisa had betrayed her. She said she was the victim of a conspiracy, but her words were drowned in a flood of comments calling her a liar, a cheater, a joke. Ryan tried too, making another drunken live stream, but by then no one cared. He wasn't the villain anymore. He was the clown. I should have felt victorious, but all I felt was empty. I had lost my fiancé, my job, my dignity. Even though the spotlight had shifted, the wreckage of my life was still there. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that storage room, that desk, Ryan's smirk. Every time I opened my phone, there was another reminder. And yet, deep down, a strange calm started to grow. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't the one scrambling. They were. Claire was burning bridges faster than she could rebuild them. Ryan was losing whatever shred of reputation he had left. And I was standing still, watching them collapse under their own weight. People started reaching out, not to mock me this time, but to tell me they admired how I hadn't exploded publicly, how I had carried myself with restraint while the two of them embarrassed themselves. That word spread too. Soon, the story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about how I had survived it. I didn't plan revenge. I didn't need to. The chaos took care of that for me. I thought after the second bar fight their story would finally burn itself out, but it turns out scandals don't just fade when you expect them to. They linger like smoke, seeping into every corner until there's nothing left to choke on. By the week after that night, the reunion drama wasn't just a story in our town. It had leaked out, picked up by people online who lived nowhere near us, strangers who loved the mess because it wasn't theirs. They made threads, edits, even parody accounts. Someone created a TikTok account pretending to be Ryan from the storage room, posting stupid, smirking videos in a classroom. Another pretended to be Claire the desk queen. They had tens of thousands of views. I couldn't escape it. At the grocery store, a kid stocking shelves looked at me with wide eyes and whispered something into his friend's ear. When I turned, they were laughing, holding up their phones like they were filming. At first I hated it, wanted to crawl into the floor. But then I realized something. They weren't laughing at me anymore. They were laughing at her. At him. The narrative had shifted. People weren't asking how I'd failed to notice what was happening under my nose. They were asking how she could humiliate herself so badly, so publicly, and still try to spin it as someone else's fault. And they were asking how Ryan could strut around like a king 1 minute and be slapped across the face in a dive bar the next. I didn't need to defend myself. Their downfall was my defense. Claire didn't take it quietly. She kept trying to climb back out of the hole, making videos where she cried about how she had been mistreated, about how she was just human, and people shouldn't judge. Some people offered sympathy, but most just mocked her harder. The comments sections were brutal. Every time she said something, someone responded with a screenshot, a clip, or a reminder of the storage room. Ryan, on the other hand, tried to play tough. He went on local radio for an interview, talking about how he'd been set up at the reunion, how he was a victim of a smear campaign. The host let him ramble, but afterward the station cut a highlight reel of his contradictions and posted it online. It went viral too, but not in the way he wanted. The final blow came a few weeks later. I was at home, trying to build a new routine, when a friend sent me a link. It was a news article. Ryan had been arrested. Fraud charges. Apparently, he'd been scamming people with fake car deals, promising vehicles that never existed, pocketing deposits. Some of his victims were people we went to school with. He wasn't just a scumbag in love. He was a crook. The mugshot hit the internet like gasoline on fire. That smirk was gone, replaced with a hollow, vacant stare. The same people who had cheered for him in high school now ridiculed him mercilessly. Memes popped up everywhere, from storage room to cell room. Claire went silent for a while after that. I almost thought she'd left town, but then I saw her one afternoon, standing outside a cheap diner in her work uniform, smoking a cigarette, looking 10 years older than she had at the reunion. She spotted me across the street and froze. I don't know what expression she expected me to wear, pity, anger, maybe still love. But I didn't give her any of those. I just kept walking. She dropped her eyes, as if the weight of everything finally pressed down on her shoulders. Her parents stopped talking to her, too. Word was they had cut her off completely. She was living back at their place but paying her own way, scraping together shifts. Everyone who used to praise her beauty and ambition now avoided her. Even Lisa, the friend who had exposed her, wanted nothing to do with her anymore. She was radioactive. As for me, things didn't magically get better overnight. I was still unemployed, still the subject of whispers, still the face people remembered when they mentioned the reunion. But slowly, the story started to bend. The more Ryan and Claire destroyed themselves, the more I started to look like the survivor. People admired the way I hadn't engaged, hadn't tried to scream my innocence into the void. I had walked out and let them eat each other alive. That silence turned into strength in people's eyes. Months later, when the dust had mostly settled, I got invited to dinner by a group of old classmates. At first, I thought it was a joke, that they just wanted to poke at the wound. But when I showed up, they clapped me on the back, bought me drinks, told me I'd handled it better than they would have. They joked that the reunion would never be forgotten, but that in the end I had won. It felt strange to laugh with them, but it also felt like air after being underwater too long. I didn't forgive Claire. I didn't forgive Ryan. But I didn't need to. Their lives had already handed them the punishment I never could have designed. He was rotting in a cell, a fraud exposed. She was stuck in the same town, the same streets, with everyone pointing at her as the girl who had ruined herself for nothing. And me? I rebuilt. Slowly. I found another job in a different city. I moved away from the streets that carried too many whispers. I started dating again, cautiously, with scars I didn't bother hiding. I told the truth to the ones who asked, and strangely, that truth didn't repel them. It made me real. The next reunion came years later. I almost didn't go, but curiosity pulled me back. The gym was decorated the same way, the lights still cheap, the floor still squeaky. Faces were older, heavier, more tired. But when I walked in, heads turned, not in ridicule this time, but in recognition. I wasn't the guy from the video anymore. I was the guy who had survived it. Claire wasn't there. No one expected her to be. Ryan obviously wasn't either. But people still whispered about the storage room scandal, like it had become part of the school's folklore. A cautionary tale. Some even told me directly, that night was crazy, but you walked out with dignity. It was surreal, knowing that the worst night of my life had turned into the story that defined me, but not as a victim. As someone who stood still while others destroyed themselves. I don't romanticize it. I don't call it fate or karma. It was ugly, humiliating, and brutal. It cost me more than I ever thought I could lose. But it also stripped away illusions I didn't know I was living under. Claire was never the woman I thought she was. Ryan was never the threat he wanted me to think he was. And the people who cheered their downfall reminded me of something important. The world doesn't need you to fight for justice all the time. Sometimes it hands it out for you, messy and cruel. When I think back to that night, I don't hear Claire's screams anymore. I don't see Ryan's smirk. I don't feel the rage in my fists. I remember the silence after I walked out of that room, the cold night air hitting my face, the way the sky stretched overhead, uncaring. That silence was the real ending. Everything else was just noise.